Most people don't realize they are slowly falling apart until the cracks become impossible to ignore. It doesn't happen all at once. It happens quietly, through small compromises, delayed dreams, ignored standards, and promises made to yourself that were never kept. One day you wake up and wonder how you ended up so far from the person you once imagined becoming. Here's the uncomfortable truth: life does not pause when you lose direction. It keeps moving, whether you are growing or drifting. And drifting feels safe at first. There's no resistance, no effort, no fear of failure. But drift always has a destination, and it is never the place you hope to arrive. At some point, a moment comes, a moment of frustration, disappointment, or quiet clarity, when you realize that waiting has cost you more than trying ever could. You see that circumstances did not shape you nearly as much as your daily choices did. Not the big ones, but the small ones repeated over time. This is the moment where rebuilding begins. Not because everything is broken, but because you finally see what is possible. Rebuilding yourself is not about becoming someone else. It is about returning to the standards you once knew, the discipline you once avoided, and the potential that never left, only waited. And the question is no longer can you rebuild yourself? The real question is, how long will you keep living without doing it? Personal responsibility is the foundation of rebuilding yourself, because it is the moment you stop negotiating with excuses and start dealing with reality. It is the shift from asking, "Why did this happen to me?" to declaring, "What am I going to do about it?" Most people want improvement without ownership. They want better results, but continue the same thinking habits and attitudes that produced their current situation. Responsibility changes that equation. When you accept that your life is largely the result of your choices, you also accept that different choices can create a different life. Taking responsibility does not mean blaming yourself for everything that ever went wrong. It means recognizing that blaming others keeps you powerless. Circumstances may influence you, but they do not control you unless you allow them to. Two people can experience the same hardship. One grows stronger, the other grows bitter. The difference is not the event, but the response. Responsibility is choosing to respond with intention instead of reaction. Many people wait for confidence before they act, but responsibility works the other way around. You act first, and confidence follows. When you take responsibility for your actions, your time, your mindset, and your growth, you begin to trust yourself. Trust is built when you keep promises to yourself, even small ones. Waking up on time, finishing what you start, and doing what you said you would do may seem minor, but they quietly rebuild self-respect, which is the backbone of personal transformation. Responsibility also removes the illusion that someone else is coming to rescue you. That illusion is comforting but dangerous. Waiting for permission, motivation, or perfect conditions delays growth. The day you realize that no one is obligated to fix your life is the same day you become free to fix it yourself. Freedom is not the absence of responsibility, it is the acceptance of it. When responsibility becomes part of your thinking, excuses lose their power. Excuses sound reasonable, but they are expensive. They cost time, energy, and opportunity. Every excuse explains the past while robbing the future. Responsible thinking asks better questions. Instead of "why can't I?" said "how can I?" Instead of "who's at fault?" it asks "what's the next step?" These questions move life forward. Responsibility also demands honesty, especially with yourself. Self-deception delays rebuilding. You cannot change what you refuse to acknowledge. If your habits are weak, admit it. If your skills are lacking, admit it. If your attitude is holding you back, admit it. Honesty is not harsh, it is practical. It gives you something solid to work with. Pretending keeps you comfortable, but comfort rarely produces growth. Another overlooked aspect of responsibility is emotional ownership. Many people give others control over how they feel. They say things like, "You made me angry," or "They ruined my day." Responsibility means understanding that emotions are signals, not commands. You may not control what happens, but you control how long you carry it. Emotional responsibility builds resilience, and resilience is essential when rebuilding yourself, because progress is rarely smooth. Responsibility also sharpens your awareness of time. You stop wasting it on complaints and start investing it in improvement. You begin to understand that days are not equal, but effort makes them valuable. 1 hour used wisely can change direction. One neglected hour can quietly reinforce old patterns. Responsible people respect time because they understand it is the raw material of results. As responsibility deepens, discipline becomes less of a struggle. You no longer rely on feelings to determine action. You act based on commitment. You do what needs to be done because you have decided that your future matters more than your comfort. This mindset builds momentum. And momentum makes progress feel natural rather than forced. Personal responsibility is not a burden, it is leverage. It gives you something solid to stand on in an unpredictable world. When you own your choices, your habits, your reactions, and your growth, you stop waiting for life to change and start changing how you live each day, knowing that every decision, no matter how small, is shaping the person you are becoming right now. Self-discipline is the quiet force behind every lasting transformation because it operates independently of mood, excitement, or external encouragement. Motivation is emotional, it rises and falls. Discipline is intentional, it remains steady. When rebuilding yourself, relying on motivation is risky because motivation shows up when conditions are convenient. Discipline shows up when conditions are difficult, inconvenient, or uncomfortable. That is why discipline produces results while motivation merely produces good intentions. Many people wait to feel ready before they act, but discipline does not wait for readiness. It creates readiness through action. You do not become disciplined by thinking about it or planning for the perfect moment. You become disciplined by choosing to act when it would be easier not to. Each disciplined action, no matter how small, strengthens your ability to repeat it. Over time, discipline becomes part of your identity rather than a temporary effort. Discipline is not about punishment or restriction, as many people assume. It is about structure. It gives direction to energy that would otherwise be scattered. Without discipline, talent drifts, potential fades, and goals remain distant ideas. With discipline, even ordinary ability becomes powerful. Consistency turns average actions into extraordinary outcomes because repetition compounds. A single workout does little, but hundreds reshape the body. One page of reading seems insignificant, but daily reading reshapes the mind. One of the biggest misunderstandings about discipline is believing it requires constant intensity. In reality, discipline thrives on simplicity. It is easier to maintain small, manageable commitments than dramatic bursts of effort. Discipline asks for daily alignment, not heroic sacrifice. Showing up for the basics every day builds a foundation strong enough to support bigger goals. Skipping the basics while chasing breakthroughs leads to burnout and frustration. Discipline also protects you from emotional decision-making. Feelings are temporary, but decisions based on feelings often create permanent consequences. When you commit to discipline, you decide in advance how you will act, regardless of how you feel in the moment. This removes negotiation from your daily choices. You no longer ask yourself whether you feel like doing the work. You simply do it because it is part of who you are becoming. There will be resistance, especially in the early stages. The mind seeks comfort and familiarity, even when those things are harmful. Discipline challenges comfort, and discomfort often disguises itself as fatigue, doubt, or procrastination. Discipline recognizes these signals without obeying them. It understands that growth and comfort rarely coexist. Each time you move through resistance instead of surrendering to it, you build inner strength that carries into every area of life. Discipline also builds self-respect. When you consistently follow through on your commitments, you prove to yourself that you are reliable. This internal trust is more valuable than external validation. Confidence grows not from praise but from evidence. Every time you keep a promise to yourself, you add another piece of evidence that you can depend on your own word. This quiet confidence fuels further progress. Another powerful aspect of discipline is its ability to simplify life. Instead of constantly deciding what to do, you establish routines that guide your behavior. Routines reduce mental clutter and conserve energy for what truly matters. When discipline becomes routine, effort decreases while results increase. What once required struggle becomes automatic. Discipline also sharpens focus. It teaches you to delay gratification in favor of long-term rewards. In a world designed to distract and entertain, discipline becomes a competitive advantage. It allows you to work while others wait, to prepare while others procrastinate, and to build while others consume. Over time, the gap between disciplined effort and undisciplined intention becomes visible in results. Rebuilding yourself demands patience, and discipline supplies it. Progress is often slow and invisible in the beginning. Discipline keeps you moving when results are not yet obvious. It trusts the process even when the outcome is distant. This faith is not blind. It is built on understanding that repeated effort eventually produces change. Self-discipline is not about becoming rigid or joyless. It is about gaining control over your actions so your future is not dictated by impulse. When discipline becomes stronger than your excuses, your direction becomes clearer, your standards rise, and your ability to rebuild yourself becomes not just possible, but inevitable. Growth through adversity begins with understanding that difficulty is not a sign that something has gone wrong. It is often proof that something important is happening. Many people interpret hardship as failure or unfairness, but adversity is simply life applying pressure. Pressure reveals structure. It exposes weaknesses, but it also uncovers strength that comfort could never produce. Without challenge, character remains untested and potential stays dormant. Adversity interrupts routine, and routine is where stagnation hides. When life is predictable, there is little reason to question habits, beliefs, or direction. Difficulty forces reflection. It demands adjustment. It pushes you to reevaluate what matters and what does not. In this way, adversity acts as a reset mechanism, breaking patterns that no longer serve you and creating space for growth to occur. Most people ask why adversity happens, but a more useful question is what adversity is asking of you. Every challenge carries an invitation to grow stronger, wiser, or more disciplined. The lesson is rarely obvious in the moment. Pain clouds perspective. Frustration narrows focus. But when you respond with curiosity instead of resistance, adversity becomes a teacher rather than an enemy. Adversity also builds resilience, which is the ability to continue moving forward despite discomfort. Resilience is not about avoiding pain. It is about learning to function within it. Each time you endure difficulty without giving up, you expand your tolerance for challenge. What once felt overwhelming becomes manageable. This inner strength cannot be borrowed or taught through theory. It is earned through experience. Another hidden gift of adversity is clarity. When life becomes difficult, distractions lose their appeal. You begin to see what truly matters. Shallow goals fade. Meaningful priorities rise. Adversity strips away the unnecessary and forces focus on what is essential. This clarity often leads to more intentional decisions and a deeper sense of purpose. Adversity also exposes weaknesses that comfort conceals. It reveals gaps in skill, mindset, preparation, or discipline. While this exposure can feel uncomfortable, it is valuable. You cannot strengthen what you do not identify. Struggle highlights areas that require growth, giving you a clear direction for improvement. Those who avoid adversity also avoid this self-awareness, remaining unaware of their own limitations. There is also a psychological shift that occurs when adversity is faced head-on. You begin to realize that pain does not automatically mean defeat. You learn that discomfort can coexist with progress. This realization changes how you approach future challenges. Instead of retreating at the first sign of difficulty, you lean in with confidence built from past survival. Adversity teaches patience in a way that success never does. When results are delayed, you are forced to develop persistence. You learn to keep going without immediate reward. This patience becomes a powerful asset because meaningful growth often takes longer than expected. Those who quit early never discover how close they were to transformation. Another critical aspect of adversity is its ability to build humility. Difficulty reminds you that you do not control everything. It tempers ego and encourages learning. Humility opens the door to growth because it allows you to listen, adapt, and improve. Arrogance resists adversity. Humility learns from it. Adversity also strengthens emotional intelligence. You become more aware of your reactions, triggers, and coping mechanisms. You learn how to manage stress, regulate emotions, and maintain focus under pressure. These skills are transferable to every area of life, from relationships to leadership to personal goals. Perhaps the most profound impact of adversity is the identity shift it creates. When you overcome difficulty, you no longer see yourself the same way. You become someone who has endured, adapted, and continued. This identity becomes a source of confidence that cannot be taken away because it is rooted in experience rather than circumstance. Growth through adversity is not about romanticizing struggle or seeking hardship. It is about understanding that when difficulty arrives, it carries the raw material for transformation. How you respond determines whether adversity becomes a breaking point or a turning point. When you choose to learn, endure, and adapt, adversity becomes one of the most powerful tools in rebuilding yourself into someone stronger, wiser, and more capable than before. The philosophy of daily improvement is rooted in the understanding that real change is not dramatic but deliberate. People often underestimate the power of small actions because they look insignificant in isolation. One small choice seems too minor to matter, so it is easily dismissed. Yet life is not shaped by single moments of intensity, but by repeated behaviors practiced over time. Daily improvement works because it respects how growth actually happens quietly, gradually, and consistently. Small improvements compound in the same way interest compounds in a bank account. At first, the growth is almost invisible. You read a few pages, practice a skill for a short time, make a slightly better decision than yesterday, and nothing seems to change. This early phase discourages many people. They assume the effort is pointless because the results are not immediate. What they fail to recognize is that progress is accumulating beneath the surface. When consistency is maintained long enough, that hidden accumulation eventually becomes visible and often appears sudden, even though it is not. Daily improvement shifts focus away from outcomes and toward process. Instead of obsessing over how far there is to go, attention is placed on what can be done today. This reduces overwhelm. Big goals can feel intimidating and paralyzing, but small daily actions feel manageable. When you focus on today's effort, momentum builds naturally. Momentum reduces resistance, and resistance is often the real obstacle to growth. Another strength of daily improvement is that it builds reliability within yourself. When you commit to small, consistent actions, you increase the likelihood of follow-through. Large commitments invite procrastination. Small commitments invite participation. Over time, these small wins accumulate into confidence. You begin to see yourself as someone who shows up consistently, and that identity reinforces the behavior. Daily improvement also allows room for mistakes without derailing progress. Perfectionism often sabotages growth by creating unrealistic expectations. When improvement is framed as a daily practice rather than a flawless performance, setbacks become part of the process rather than reasons to quit. Missing a day does not erase progress, quitting does. This mindset encourages resilience and persistence. Consistency also sharpens awareness. When you engage in daily improvement, you become more attentive to your habits, choices, and patterns. You begin to notice what works and what does not. This feedback loop allows for adjustment and refinement. Growth becomes intentional rather than accidental. Another important element of daily improvement is its impact on discipline. Discipline becomes less about force and more about rhythm. When actions are repeated daily, they require less willpower over time. What once felt difficult becomes routine. This efficiency frees mental energy for higher-level thinking and creativity. You are no longer fighting yourself, you are flowing with structure. Daily improvement also aligns well with long-term thinking. It acknowledges that meaningful growth takes time and patience. Instead of chasing quick fixes, it encourages sustainable progress. This patience protects against burnout and disappointment. You are less likely to give up when expectations are realistic and progress is measured in consistency rather than speed. The philosophy also reinforces personal responsibility in a practical way. You may not control everything that happens, but you always control what you do today. Daily improvement empowers you to act within that control. Even on difficult days, you can make one small positive choice. That choice keeps progress alive. Over time, daily improvement reshapes standards. As small improvements accumulate, what once felt challenging becomes normal. You raise your expectations of yourself naturally, without force. Growth becomes a way of life rather than a temporary project. The beauty of daily improvement lies in its simplicity. It does not require extraordinary talent, perfect conditions, or constant motivation. It requires commitment to doing slightly better today than yesterday. This approach makes growth accessible to anyone willing to be consistent. Daily improvement is not exciting in the short term, but it is powerful in the long term. It builds strength quietly, confidence steadily, and results inevitably. When embraced fully, it transforms not only what you achieve, but how you think, act, and live, turning steady effort into lasting personal transformation. Your environment and influences quietly shape your behavior long before willpower ever gets a chance to intervene. Most people believe their life is controlled by motivation or intelligence, but in reality, it is controlled by what they repeatedly see, hear, and engage with. Environment is the invisible hand guiding daily decisions. When you understand this, rebuilding yourself stops being a battle of force and starts becoming a process of alignment. Environment is not limited to physical surroundings. It includes the people you interact with, the conversations you entertain, the media you consume, the standards you are exposed to, and the expectations that surround you. These elements constantly send signals to your mind about what is normal, acceptable, or possible. Over time, those signals become beliefs, and beliefs shape behavior. This is why change is difficult when the environment remains the same. You may desire growth, but if your surroundings reward old habits, those habits will continue. People are especially powerful influences. Human beings naturally adjust to the expectations and behaviors of those around them. When you are surrounded by people who complain, settle, and justify mediocrity, those patterns start to feel reasonable. Not because you agree with them consciously, but because repetition normalizes them. On the other hand, when you spend time around people who value growth, discipline, and responsibility, their standards begin to challenge your own. You start asking better questions, setting higher expectations, and becoming more aware of your potential. Conversations matter more than most people realize. The topics discussed regularly shape perspective. Conversations focused on problems without solutions reinforce helplessness. Conversations centered on ideas, improvement, and opportunity expand thinking. What you talk about repeatedly becomes what you think about automatically. This internal dialogue influences decisions, confidence, and direction. Your informational environment plays a similar role. What you read, watch, and listen to feeds your mind. The mind, like the body, becomes a product of its diet. Consuming content filled with negativity, distraction, and fear weakens focus and lowers ambition. Consuming content that challenges thinking, introduces new ideas, and reinforces discipline strengthens mindset. Over time, these inputs shape how you interpret experiences and respond to challenges. Environment also influences habits through ease and friction. You tend to do what is convenient and avoid what is difficult. If unhealthy choices are easily accessible, they become routine. If productive tools are within reach, productivity increases. This is not a character flaw. It is human behavior. Designing your environment to support growth reduces reliance on willpower. Removing distractions, organizing your space, and structuring routines make better choices more automatic. Another overlooked aspect of environment is emotional influence. Some environments drain energy while others restore it. Constant exposure to negativity, criticism, or chaos creates emotional fatigue, making self-discipline harder to maintain. Supportive environments encourage resilience by providing stability and encouragement. Emotional safety allows growth because it reduces the mental load required to simply survive. Rebuilding yourself often requires distancing from environments that reinforce the old version of you. This can be uncomfortable. Familiarity feels safe, even when it is limiting. But growth demands change, and change disrupts comfort. Choosing a better environment is not an act of arrogance or rejection. It is an act of self-respect. You are not obligated to remain in spaces that hinder your progress. Environment also affects identity. You tend to act in ways that align with how others see you. When people expect less from you, it becomes easier to deliver less. When people expect growth, responsibility, and effort, you rise to meet those expectations. This is why upgrading your environment often leads to rapid change. Your behavior adjusts to match the new standard. Influence works subtly and consistently. Rarely does one conversation or one book transform a person. Change happens through repeated exposure. That is why environment must be managed intentionally. Left unchecked, it shapes you by default. Managed deliberately, it shapes you by design. You do not need perfect surroundings to rebuild yourself, but you do need awareness. Awareness allows you to choose what you allow into your mind and life. Each choice either strengthens or weakens the direction you are trying to go. When your environment supports your goals, progress feels more natural and resistance decreases. Rebuilding yourself becomes less about fighting old habits and more about stepping into spaces that encourage new ones. Where growth feels expected, improvement feels normal, and becoming better feels like the natural response to what surrounds you. Vision and purpose give direction to personal rebuilding because without a clear sense of where you are going, effort becomes scattered and inconsistent. Many people work hard but feel unfulfilled because their actions are not connected to a meaningful destination. Vision answers the question of who you are becoming, while purpose explains why that transformation matters. Together, they create internal alignment that sustains growth even when motivation fades. Vision is not fantasy or wishful thinking. It is a deliberate mental picture of a future self shaped by values, discipline, and intention. When you can clearly see the person you want to become, decisions begin to organize themselves. Choices are no longer random. You start measuring actions against that future image. If something does not move you closer to it, it becomes easier to say no. Purpose adds emotional weight to that vision. It connects daily effort to something larger than comfort or convenience. Without purpose, discipline feels heavy and progress feels empty. With purpose, sacrifice becomes meaningful. You are no longer just building habits. You are building a life that reflects what you value most. Purpose transforms effort into commitment. Many people struggle with consistency because their goals are external and borrowed. They chase titles, money, or approval without understanding why those things matter to them personally. Vision requires honesty. It asks you to define success on your own terms. When your vision aligns with your values, effort feels authentic rather than forced. You are no longer living someone else's expectations. Vision also provides stability during uncertainty. When circumstances change or plans fail, vision remains intact. It acts as a compass rather than a map. Maps change when obstacles appear, but a compass always points north. A clear vision keeps you oriented when progress slows or setbacks occur. You may need to adjust strategies, but your direction remains steady. Purpose strengthens resilience. When challenges arise, those without purpose interpret difficulty as a sign to stop. Those with purpose see difficulty as part of the path. Purpose does not eliminate hardship, it gives hardship meaning. It turns obstacles into tests of commitment rather than reasons for retreat. This mindset sustains effort when results are delayed. Vision also sharpens focus. In a world full of distractions, clarity becomes a competitive advantage. When you know where you are going, distractions lose their power. You become selective with your time, energy, and attention. Focus increases because your actions are guided by intention rather than impulse. This selective discipline accelerates progress. Another important aspect of vision is identity formation. You do not rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the level of your identity. Vision helps shape identity by reinforcing who you believe you are becoming. When you see yourself as disciplined, responsible, and capable, behavior begins to match that belief. Identity-based change is more durable than behavior-based change because it is rooted in self-perception. Purpose also deepens patience. When your efforts are connected to long-term meaning, you are less pressured by immediate results. You understand that meaningful growth takes time. This patience protects you from discouragement and impulsive decisions. You are willing to endure temporary discomfort because you are invested in a future that matters. Vision and purpose also enhance self-leadership. You no longer need constant external validation or direction. Your internal compass guides you. This independence strengthens confidence and reduces reliance on circumstances or opinions. You act from conviction rather than reaction. Clarity of vision does not require perfection. It evolves as you grow. What matters is direction, not detail. A clear sense of becoming is enough to guide daily decisions. Purpose grows deeper through action. You discover more about what matters by committing to growth and observing what resonates. Rebuilding yourself without vision is like constructing a building without a blueprint. Effort is wasted, progress is uneven, and results are unstable. Vision provides structure, purpose provides strength, and together they turn personal growth into a meaningful journey rather than a temporary project. When vision is clear and purpose is strong, rebuilding yourself becomes not just an act of improvement, but an expression of who you are choosing to become each day. Rebuilding yourself is not a single decision. It is a series of choices made when no one is watching. It is choosing responsibility over excuses, discipline over comfort, growth over fear, and purpose over convenience. It is understanding that adversity is not a signal to stop, but a signal to rise, that small improvements done daily outlast dramatic efforts done occasionally, and that the environment you allow around you will either strengthen your future or quietly steal it. When you commit to rebuilding yourself, you stop waiting for life to change and start changing how you show up in life. You begin to act with intention, guided by vision rather than reaction. Progress may feel slow and the path may test your patience, but every step forward reshapes your identity. Over time, the person you are becoming will thank the person you decided to be today. Rebuilding yourself is not about perfection. It is about persistence. It is about standing up one more time than you fall and choosing growth, even when it is uncomfortable. The power to rebuild has always been within you. The moment you decide to use it, everything begins to shift. I wish each one of you the courage to start, the discipline to continue, and the faith to trust the process. May you build a future that reflects your highest standards and deepest values. Good luck on your journey, and thank you for listening.